Welcome to the Graduate Job Podcast, your home for weekly information and inspiration to help you get the graduate job of your dreams.
Hello and welcome to the Graduate Job Podcast with your host, James Curran. The Graduate Job Podcast is your home for all things related to helping you on your journey to find that amazing job. Each episode I bring together the best minds in the industry, speaking to leading authors, graduate recruiters and career coaches who bring decades of experience into a bite-sized weekly 30-minute-ish show. Put simply, this is a show I wish I had when I graduated. Hello and welcome to the 103rd episode of the Graduate Job Podcast, the UK's #1 careers podcast. I've got a cracking episode for you today as I'm joined on the show by Dan Doherty, Recruitment Manager for global consulting and technology giant Capgemini. I have to warn you, it's a longer episode than normal, coming in at nearly an hour 20 today, but there's good reason for it, as we go deep down into exactly what you need to do to get a graduate job at Capgemini. We explore the different roles that they have available, from the Invent Accelerate Pro roles such as cybersecurity and project analyst roles. We also explore all aspects of the recruitment process in depth and look at the key mistakes you need to avoid. We explore why Capgemini look to recruit from a broad range of universities, why the degree you studied might matter less than you think, and why you should definitely let them know about your side hustle. We cover why 65% of applicants fall at the initial online application stage and what you can do to make sure that isn't you. We look at why you need to forget about your competency answers when applying to Capgemini and instead start to think about what your strengths are. We discuss why it is so crucial to show your authentic self in the video interview and exactly what you need to do to impress when you get to the assessment centre. If you have ever thought about applying to Capgemini, consulting firm more generally, or even any professional services company, then this is an episode you won't want to miss. As always, you can find a full transcript with all you won't want to miss. As always, you can find a full transcript with all of the links over in the show notes at graduatejobpodcast.com/Capgemini. As I said, it's a longer episode than normal, so get yourself a cup of tea, settle down and enjoy my chat with Dan Doherty. Before we start though, let me tell you about my upcoming online course titled How to Get a Graduate Job, which goes live on the 27th of August. This course condenses down all of my years of experience of coaching people to get graduate jobs, my personal experience applying for graduate jobs, and then being on the other side of the table and interviewing other people for graduate jobs. And also from the 100+ episodes of the podcast, condensing all of that down into one online video course which takes you step by step through everything you need to know and everything you need to do to get a graduate scheme like Capgemini. I take you through 8 modules. From getting ready to do it to get a graduate job, it's in my course. Now this course is for you if you've been applying to graduate schemes but just not getting any offers and you don't know why. Alternatively, if you've just graduated and you know it's going to be a really competitive job market and you want to make sure that you are as prepared as you can be, then this course is definitely for you. If you're serious about getting a graduate scheme, then head to howtogetagraduatejob.com. That's howtogetagraduatejob.com. where you can get my free guide, the 5 steps you must take before applying for graduate schemes. It will revolutionise how you start getting ready to apply for a graduate job. Okay, let's head over to the interview. A very warm welcome to Dan Doherty, Attraction and Recruitment Manager at Capgemini. Dan, welcome to the Graduate Job Podcast.
Thanks very much. Good to be here.
And as a way of introduction, would you like to tell us a little bit about what you do at Capgemini?
Yeah,
Graduate Job Podcast.
Thanks very much. Good to be here.
And as a way of introduction, would you like to tell us a little bit about what you do at Capgemini?
Yeah, Capgemini as a company are a global technology consultancy, so helping other large businesses with their business and digital solutions. My role is to lead our attraction and recruitment of around 300 or so graduates and apprentices, interns and placement students each year, right across multiple locations in the UK, largely into technical roles, some into management consulting and some business roles.
Wow, 300, that's going to keep you busy.
Yes, and it's year round as well. We have multiple intakes, and the locations obviously can be quite a challenge at times as well. So we kind of are actively engaging and attracting year round and during periods of the year as well. So it's non-stop really.
Brilliant. And Capgemini holds a special place in my heart as where I started my graduate career back in the day on the consultant development community. So the precursor to the Capgemini Accelerate Invent program, which was a brilliant place to start my career. And I was at Cap for coming up to 6 years. So it'd be good to dive in and see how things have changed since I was So listeners, all the links from today and a full transcript you'll be able to find over in the show notes at graduatejobpodcast.com/Capgemini. So Dan, let's get straight into it then. You mentioned there's 300 different opportunities. Do you want to run by listeners some of the different opportunities that are available with Cap?
Yeah, that's sure. So if you take sort of the graduate route first, we have two different the graduate route first. We have two different kind of main routes coming in. One is the one that you referred to there, which is the Capgemini Invent Accelerate program, which is largely for those going into management consultancy with some specialisms by area or skills or sectors further on in their career. And then those who kind of know what they want to do now, whether it's a developer, tester, technical consultant, cybersecurity, that kind of thing. We've got roles in our Capgemini UK business which offer them a chance to come into a role from day one and almost hone in on that particular job family. So things like insights and data, things like being a business analyst, an associate consultant, or cybersecurity consultant. Those real kind of specific role titles that I guess are often associated with people at a more experienced level. We provide them a job family which might deviate in terms of technologies or business units, but they tend to stick quite closely to that specialism, and that can often be good for those students who've got a course that's quite well aligned to that area. So insights and data might be quite interesting for those who've done maths, engineering, IT, for example, whereas a business analyst could be quite a good fit for some of those people who've done some IT and business hybrid courses or even some non-STEM courses. And when we look at the apprenticeships, which is our second largest route in terms of volume, so normally about 200 graduates and normally around 100 apprentices each year. And the majority of our apprentices come onto our digital and technology solutions degree apprenticeship, so they can earn a degree and earn whilst they learn. Full-time role with a blended learning part-time degree over 5 years, 4.5 years. And obviously no student debt, so it's a great option for those who want to pursue a technical career without a degree that they've already attained. We have a business degree apprenticeship, so chartered management degree apprenticeship as well, which works in a similar format and structure over 4.5 years. And those tend to be people who come into roles which are a bit like project management office and maybe some support analyst roles and that kind of thing. We have the odd apprentices coming in as finance, cybersecurity, HR, that kind of thing, but quite niche roles and more sort of ad hoc demand that comes in. And then we have a handful of sort of placement and intern roles as well, particularly in our Telford location with one of our large clients there. Smaller numbers, but we're looking to grow that for the years to come.
Wow, you can see why I said you were busy at the beginning of the show. So lots of different options there, and the apprenticeship, learn while you earn, whilst get sort of 200 graduate roles. What would be the split then between the direct entry route and people into the sort of Invent Accelerate program?
Yeah, so it's around 60 roles in the Invent Accelerate program, the management consulting route. Which leaves around 140, I think, if my maths is right, for the more specific, the role-specific route, let's call it. Within those 140, about, I would say around 100 of them are quite technical roles. And by technical, we might mean software developer, software tester, cybersecurity, insights and data science, technical applications consultants, and those roles that are a little bit more hybrid. They might be sort of functional apps consultants, so they're kind of working a lot with technology, but perhaps not a back-end technical person, developer, software tester, cybersecurity, insights and data science, technical applications consultants, and those roles that are a little bit more hybrid. They might be sort of functional apps consultants, so they're kind of working a lot with technology, but perhaps not a back-end technical person. And then we've got a sort of proportion of roles, maybe a few dozen, which are project analysts, PMO, associate consultants, who largely work within the technology arena with their clients, but they're not the ones who necessarily build the technology. They're part of the project that delivers the technology, and maybe more the people and business side of things.
So really something for everybody there, no matter what side of technology or business you're interested in, something to get your teeth into. So let's maybe break it down into two, and we'll start with the Accelerating Event Programme, then we can go through to the role-specific programme. What sort of applicants are you looking for?
So with the event programme, it's quite a popular programme organically. I think management consulting is now, if not always been recently, the most popular career route for graduates. Usually was in the top 3 or 5 destinations anyway over the years, usually alongside sort of finance and HR and marketing and media. And with that comes a variance and real wide spectrum of applicants because of its appeal. So it from Greek history right the way through to forensic science and geography, we get it all really. There is some pockets of, or capability units we call them, who have a particular fondness towards some degree backgrounds that are quite handy to align to what they specialise in. So whether that enterprise, you may find that there's some candidates that might be slightly better aligned to those business areas, but generally what we're looking for is those who are have got quite an avid interest in the world of technology. They've got some good background and experiences, whether that's life experiences, work experiences, study experiences, that can shape, problem solvers, can shape people who are good communicators and make sure that they can show that they have got that client advocacy. Do they understand what it is that a consultant does and how we actually help our clients and why that has such an impact on their business as well as ours. So those will be the key things we look for throughout the process, and we hire on a strengths model for all of our roles, which is very much around the sort of the people and the potential and the things that they're good at that has such an impact on their business as well as ours. So those will be the key things we look for throughout the process, and we hire on a strengths model for all of our roles, which is very much around the sort of the people and the potential and the things that they're good at, they do often, and maybe would like to do more often, and not always about what they've done before, which is a little bit more sort of competency led and looking at the past and the history. So that's really important to us because it is entry level, and therefore we should be looking at the future rather than what you've done before.
Yep, no, I completely agree. And when I joined, it was there was such a broad range of, as you mentioned, degrees. I mean, I did a geography degree, and there was people from finance to classics and everything in between, and also a really broad mix of universities. I think everybody had come from a different university around the UK, so it was.
Yeah, I was just going to say, just on that, from a social mobility perspective and target unis and uni representation, I think we had well over 100 different universities represent our application pool, and nearly 100 represent our offer pool across all of our graduate roles last year. So we very rarely have a certain uni or set of unis which sort of attain a significant number of those roles. I think the most we would normally have is more than between maybe 5 or 10 offers from any singular uni out of 200. So that in itself shows you that from a social mobility index performance perspective that it's about maybe more courses rather than maybe the university that you went to, and more about the person that applies rather than where they've applied from. So yeah, from a Russell Group versus non-Russell Group uni perspective, there's an equal.
I think that your way you did your degree is going to hold you back. Your degree is as good as anyone else's, so make sure you don't let that stop you from applying. So Dan, getting in then into the detail of this scheme itself, how long is the Invent program, and how long are people on it, and then in terms of rotations, and then sort of settling down into a role?
The Invent Accelerate program is fairly new iteration of the one that you went on a few years back, and we're ongoingly looking at that program and getting sort of feedback from those that are on it as well. But in its current format, we've got a period of 21 months that the graduates spend joining in a certain grade and going off to see different rotations in different business units, and that therefore means different sort of sectors and industries. And during that time, they'll start to get a good feel for where they maybe find themselves being at home, and where they maybe find themselves being at home, and where their skill sets are best aligned, and therefore look to cement their place in that area long term after the 21 months itself. And there's quite a good retention rate as well with our graduate hiring on program, not just after the 21 months, but into 3, 4, 5 years onwards. I think you mentioned yourself there that you're there for at least 5 years. So we do find that the graduates benefit from being in a consultancy whereby they're still employed by the same people. They're still have the Capgemini sort of values at the heart of what they do, but the opportunities they get can vary significantly between sectors, industries and locations, and therefore it kind of feels per assignment that you're changing job in itself, rather than having to leave employers to get that almost gig economy style feel that seems to be a bit of a stat or something in the press, or a bit of a myth out there that graduates just want a job hop. If you can provide that almost variety within your program and your time at the employer, then there's no need for them to go and explore elsewhere, if you see what I mean. So yep. That 21 months gives them that early variety that they really want.
And in terms of location, where will applicants be? Is it London and Edinburgh, or just focused in London?
Just London as it stands for Capgemini Invent Accelerate program. Where the projects would be could be across the country. So something that we ask all of our applicants, apprentices or graduates is that they're UK travel mobile. So a base location may be near to where they live, like Birmingham or Manchester, London, etc. But their client could be in Norwich, in Northampton, or in Inverness.
Things I probably underestimated at the beginning was just how much time away from home that you'd spend in the role. You might get lucky and get a role in London, but the odds on you're going to be, working away Monday to Thursday, which was really good fun. But suits some people more than others. But at the beginning of your career, and especially if you're single, it's a really fun lifestyle and very social. Working in small teams on projects, you really get to know people quickly and just bond very quickly.
I think the point you make there about it not being for everyone, and that's absolutely fine if it isn't. And we are really clear at multiple stages during the process about that, just to make sure that they see it as opportunistic and they see it as an attractive part of the offering, not as a chore. We've had people who might have been semi-professional footballers, athletes, musicians, people who've got responsibilities to have in their local community or within family and friend circles, and missing football training part of the offering, not as a chore. We've had people who might have been semi-professional footballers, athletes, musicians, people who've got responsibilities to have in their local community or within family and friend circles, and missing football training on a Tuesday meant they couldn't play on a Saturday and maybe have a semi-professional sort of wage coming in and things like that. And they had to make some decisions at that stage, and despite being offered a role, it meant that we had to part ways, because they just weren't able to fully commit to what we needed them to do, and that's absolutely fine. Circumstantially, that can change over time, and maybe we'd see somebody like that person again, maybe further down the line when they've settled down, maybe more or whatever. So it's something that should not be overlooked. It's hard to, like you mentioned there, it's hard to really understand what it looks like, what it feels like. So I'd really encourage those who are, look, there's so much glamour associated with it, but you need to have a sort of an agile mindset almost, that your circumstance, your environments, and your time away from home could be quite unpredictable. But let me just set the record straight. We're not talking about like a haulage driver where you get a PDA in the morning to say you're going to be driving here and then driving there. It's more static than that, but at least you can plan both your work and non-work activities in advance a little bit more than a haulage driver, let's say.
Yep. And with the Invent program, is there still a really strong emphasis on the social and community aspect of it?
There is, yeah. I think you find if you're heading into sort of the London offices on a Friday, you'll see a lot of the grads and apprentices who've been away on projects, want to go into the office to see each other that they might not have seen for a number of weeks or months, and they're involved in some of their, want to go into the office to see each other that they might not have seen for a number of weeks or months, and they're involved in some of their giving back activities, which is a necessity part of their program, their role to evident that they are giving back to local community. And there's various different topics around environment, around people, around digital skills, charities that they can be involved in as well. So in their non-BAU kind of work, they do have a chance to give back, and part of that is to really work with each other, and probably those that you wouldn't find on your projects day to day, maybe from different job families, different business units, different locations, and more often than not, they may well keep in touch with those from their induction period, that might have been a year or so beforehand.
When I was there, it was a very strong community, and I'm still friends with people that I joined with, all these years later. So you do, especially when you're working away, you do build very rapid. You've got available business analyst, insights and data, cybersecurity. And you mentioned also that some degrees tend to, lean or be more relevant to some of the roles than others. Consulting is different because it's sort of quite difficult to have work experience in management consulting. With the direct entry roles, do you specifically need that relevancy in a degree or work experience, or are you quite agnostic when it comes to people applying?
So it can vary really between the role families. So some of them that are really, really specific and niche, they do tend to have a kind of a natural alignment. It tends to appeal to an audience. So if I take something quite specific, like a route into sort of data science and insights and data software developers, and you've got to really be interested in data, and that could often stem from people who've done data-related subjects rather than a hobbyist that's data-related. I mean, I don't know, there are many hobbies that are such like that are related to data in some ways, compared to maybe somebody that might have a side hustle, which is social media. They could link that to digital media and link it to marketing, for example. There'd be almost like a loose alignment there. With data analysts and with data science, it's probably not as easy to align. So we probably find that there's a spectrum of really niche technical roles, and then some of the more business roles which show more variety in courses that apply, and therefore courses that maybe are successful in the process. We don't have a prerequisite with any of our roles that you have to have this degree to get onto the role. Best examples of that are some of our software developers are graduate software developers, and they've not done a computer science or IT course. They may have been people who've done maths, they might have been people who've done engineering, they might have picked up some coding as part of a course and then took it to another level with self-taught courses. They might have got certifications in something they self-funded. They might have done, we've got one chap that's on a history degree who's in our robotics process automation practice, and he's in a software developer role because of something he did outside of his uni degree. And I think that's a really good point to hone in on, that for students that are listening, don't underestimate the non-course related potential indirect affiliation between that and what you're applying to. Don't assume that recruiters or assessors can join those dots. Do make sure that when you're applying, whether you've got it on a CV, whether you're talking about your motivation or interest in a role on a digital interview or at an assessment centre, you can do that dot joining for them, and it will add some credibility as to why you're joining for them, and it will add some credibility as to why you're there, why you're in front of them, why you've applied. Because on the flip side of that, if you've got a computer science degree, that does not in any way make you superior to any other candidate in the process for a software developer role. Mm-hmm. Just because you've done some software development as part of the degree does not mean you're going to be better at the role or you're more suitable for us. So if you think about it from those two angles, you're either a candidate that sits in one or each of those, and that should give you I guess if you talk about things like imposter syndrome with even candidates in processes, never mind in roles that you hear about these days, that should reassure them that they're not seen as a superior or inferior candidate just by courses or universities that they've gone to.
Yeah, it's a brilliant point, and so many things to touch upon there, and especially with software developing, where for some people it is just a passion, and as you mentioned, it doesn't matter what degree you've got, and you spend your weekends coding and coming up with websites or whatever it might be you're spending your time on. That passion is just invaluable, and it doesn't matter what degree you've got. If you're interested in it and you put the time in, then it'll stand you in good stead for the application.
Absolutely.
How do you feel then, Dan, about we touched on offline in terms of candidates having side hustles, things that they're working on the side? Is that something that you're keen to hear more about?
So I think there was a conference a few months back in Q1 with the ISE, and there was somebody from the ISE themselves that talked about side hustles in some depth, and I think there was a stat to say that around 41% of undergrad students had a side hustle of some kind, which was a far higher percentage than a lot of the employers in the room thought, and it kind of made us think over the coming months really about the perception of side hustles. It kind of made us think over the coming months really about the perception of side hustles amongst family, friends, and when it comes to careers, there's almost a taboo element of it on both sides of it, from a candidate and an employer, it seems. And I kind of thought about it from Capgemini point of view, and we've hired so many apprentices that their side hustle, their side hobby, their kind of non-academic or non-working hobby or interest is software development or coding or something technical, and they want to get paid to do something they're doing on the side, and that in itself is still almost like a side hustle, but without getting paid to do it. But making it being a job is obviously an aspiration of theirs, and they do really well in our process because of the things you mentioned around having a passion and real subject matter interest in it. And our clients love the people that love what they're doing, because the reason they work with us is because they don't have the skill sets in-house to be able to deal with the problem they've got. So having someone that comes in that's not only able to do it capability-wise, but do it with such passion is obviously quite endearing and infectious for them. So what we're looking at going forward, I think, is to do some webinars and do some more research into graduates and the school leaver market around side hustles and how you weave that into your recruitment process in a inclusive way, in an engaging way, so that the candidates are more willing to share what they are doing as a side hustle. Obviously, if it's relevant and it is to aid their application, then it's their judgment as to whether they include that. But it shouldn't be seen as a negative thing, in my opinion, and we definitely don't here. There's a number of our graduates that probably have a side hustle which is totally unrelated to what they do. There's got a chap who's finished his apprenticeship now. He runs a clothing firm online and sells on Instagram, etc. And that's been his thing since he was maybe 16 as an aspiration, and now he's got the chance to do that. He's a salesman by day, and now he joined as a software developer. So he's really gone kind of full circle from tech to non-tech. But I guess some of his skills in the sales environment and commercial skills have helped his side hustle, and his side hustle's helped his day job. So if they're complementary in an indirect way, then I can't see why employers would see it as a negative thing. And the other stat I'll sort of leave on that section of the call is that there was only a small percentage of those 41% actually wanted to pursue it as a full-time career. Like the real minority, I think it was less than 15 poorly. That's not actually what they're doing it for. It's an interesting and probably a rising topic. I think we'll see a lot more and hear a lot more about.
No, I definitely completely agree. But we talked earlier about passion, and you can demonstrate that passion in many ways. It doesn't have to be the classic group exercise at university. If you do have skills in different areas, then make sure you are bringing them to the fore through the different parts of the application process. So maybe just before we do move on to the application process, one final question then on the direct entry roles. Location-wise, are they London, or is it more of a geographic spread for them?
Yeah, so a huge geographic spread for those. We have a number of roles are London, Birmingham, Manchester bases, and Woking in Surrey, and we have a lot of roles in Telford, some graduate roles down in Worthing, down in West Sussex, South Coast. We have some odd roles from time to time that might be up into Scotland, Glasgow, and then on a rare occasion there may be some client-based location roles, which could be up in Cumbria or South Wales or the Southwest. So largely the spine of England, the Manchester, Birminghams, plus Telford and Worthing is probably the key 5 locations really.
So lots of chance to experience the joys of the UK that you'd not seen before. I know I spent quite a bit of time on a project in Telford, and it wasn't an area I've been to before, but it was, lots of nice pubs around there. So it's always, you always get to see different parts of the country. So let's move on to the application process then in detail. So Dan, is the application process the same for both the Invent program and the direct entry, or is there quite a difference?
It's largely the same with an online application form.
Both the Invent program and the direct entry, or is there quite a difference?
It's largely the same with an online application form, which is manually screened. The reason I sort of stress that is that we want you to, particularly in the passion and motivation, is to tell us what you want us to see and hear about you, not what you think we want to see and hear. There's no model answers to our application forms, and it's a great opportunity for you to differentiate yourself, just the same as where you might have done a personal statement or a CV. It's treated the exact same. If there's a lack of motivation to apply, then we may think you've got a lack of motivation to actually want the role. So it's really key at that stage. Then candidates will go into a series of 2 stages before the assessment centres, one being the digital interview, which is a mix of questions they read, record the answers, and additional strengths test online, which puts them in different situations that they might find themselves as a consultant, and look to choose preferred options and look for consistency in their mindset. And then there's the assessment centre itself, which would normally be hosted at one of the base locations, and you'll find yourself there with anything between 4 and 12 candidates normally, and it'll be normally around a half to sort of 2/3 of a day long, and run by one of the recruitment team's facilitators and the assessors from the business. So yeah, all in all, it's pretty much like for like. We don't have sort of capability assessments. We don't run anything around numerical reasoning or anything like that. We don't test developers about how well they can write in Java as such. That comes out as part of the assessment centres as well, and their passion and motivation and their in their digital interviews and in their application forms. So as I said at the start and the outset, strengths allows us to look at the potential rather than all the things that they've done before. And it does allow them to differentiate themselves a little bit easier than somebody else that's on their course from the same uni, finishing at the same time.
Yep.
Sometimes it can be quite difficult to see how you're different to the person next to you in the lecture hall. So strengths definitely does do that.
Yep. So let's maybe break down the different aspects there. So you talked about the initial online application and the need for candidates to show their motivation to apply. What are some of the ways then that the good candidates separate themselves from the average candidates who might not get through?
Yeah, good question. Differentiate themselves. If you break it down by the sort of different stages, I think the application form wise, there's a real opportunity for them to really personalise that. By the sort of different stages, I think the application form wise, there's a real opportunity for them to really personalise that motivation, answers about why Capgemini and why the role. Bear in mind that Capgemini not being a B2C type company and more of a B2B one, that candidates might not have ever sort of seen or heard Capgemini before. Maybe they saw the role through keyword searches, and maybe the role motivation supersedes the company motivation. We totally get that, but we do expect there to be a level of understanding about what we do, and it's probably more about the application of that theory. So what you read and what you see and what you watch, well, anyone could have done that, but we want to see what that actually means to you. Is there certain values or certain pieces of content or certain people you've spoken to that have really piqued your interest, or have you been able to join the dots between what your experiences have been and what that person said in that video, or really show the company that you previously applied to in there, which is the rare occasion, but it's an obvious flaw. When you go into digital interview stages, don't be overawed by that. We're not looking for actors and actresses. We're not looking for people who are selfie kings and queens. We're not looking for the absolute polished TV presenter style performance. It just needs to be quite authentic, quite real. Just prepare, make sure you've read the instructions correctly, and your answers will be your answers, not anyone else's, not what's on Wikijobs. The questions that are pitched towards you are strengths questions, they're not competency questions. So do think about answering the questions that's asked, not what you think's been asked as well. And you will find that if you've accurately portrayed yourself the way that you want us to see you, then that is you performing at your best. And again, strengths allows that to happen, as opposed to other sort of competencies which follow a very robotic. And again, strengths allows that to happen, as opposed to other sort of competencies which follow a very robotic and sometimes misleading format.
So just jumping in there, what percentage of people manage to get past the online application?
I would say there's an average of around 35%, if we include all of our different graduate and apprentice routes in. I'd say an average around 35 to maybe 40% would get through screening. Going back to the point I made earlier around the obvious alignments, it's going to need more than that for you to get past screening. If you have applied for a software developer role and you're a computer scientist, just by saying that you studied computer science at uni and you did a certain module, well, so did everyone else. And we know that we can go and Google that and go on the UCAS directory and say you did that module, like it's on your CV, you did that module. But that's just quite a almost lazy way of covering up your motivation, when it's not helping you to differentiate yourself. And if you can't be self-motivated by an application for a role that we hope is something you want to apply to, then are you going to translate into being not self-motivated when you're in the business with a project that you are aligned to? So it really is telling, and I completely get that people are have different forms of communication that they prefer, whether you're extrovert, introvert, etc., or anywhere in between. So written, verbal, visual, audio, all sorts of communications that are out there. Some people will prefer to get in front of a camera and do a digital interview. Some will prefer writing their motivation down. Some will prefer delivering it at assessment centres. And all of those different communication styles are covered in the process. So by the time we get to deciding whether to make an offer, we've seen multiple versions of that motivation, and that obviously keeps it fair. So that's a frustration for me when somebody relies too much on education and solely the education for their motivation, because it doesn't put you in a superior position at all, in our process anyway.
Yeah, one of the the focus on personalization and differentiation with the clients I coach, it's I emphasize that it's a lot better to focus your attention on a small number of companies and do the research, do the level of research that you require to get past the initial stage. I mean, it's pretty brutal. 65% of people don't get past the online application stage, and it's probably, as you mentioned, because it's a cut and pasted application. I'll just change. I'm into consulting, so I'll just delete KPMG and paste in Capgemini and hope nobody notices the difference. But it's so easy to notice the difference. It's when I've reviewed applications like that, it's it just stands out a mile, the people who've put the effort in and the people who are just trying to be lazy and just do the minimum to get past the process, and it's not going to get you past the first stage.
No, and that approach around honing in on those companies, I mean, that links to their own journey as a candidate or as a pre-applicant. What have they done to influence and motivate themselves before applying? Or is it that they've gone, right, I need to go and get a job, I'll look online, I'll go to these main job boards and I'll pick what's there? That in itself is quite dangerous, because you're only getting a snapshot of what's live at that time. And I know there's emphasis on students to continually engage with employers right from when they join the campus in the first year. Sometimes that's not at the forefront of their mind, and I completely get that. I was one of those students that left it quite late myself, and looking back on the other side of the fence now, it's absolutely regrettable really in some ways, because you've got ample opportunity over those 3+ years to really scour who's recruiting for what and where. And we live in a digital age where you can get your hands on anything, from these podcasts to videos to face-to-face events to apps that ping you a notification that someone's on campus tomorrow. Yeah. You can't be, there's a lot of stuff that's out there which talks about support for young people, but there's a certain level of responsibility that they must take for themselves, particularly in this era, which is different to the one I'm sure that yourself and myself came out of uni of, that we didn't have this at our fingertips at all. I think the onus is on the individual to make sure that they don't condense their career search into such a squeezed area and time period, because you'll just see a certain number of weeks or months worth of roles that are live. And luckily for us, Capgemini wise, we're open for lots of roles year round, and can be open at times when other employers are closed because of their cyclical process. But don't be leaving it into sort of an 8-week period at the end of your dissertation or something like that, because you may well find that there's I think there's a distinct link between cramped applications and retention versus attrition at employers at graduate and apprentice level. Those that have done the more informed decision making with a bit of a plan and looking at who they should apply to, I think there's a direct positive correlation between how long they stay at companies based on how much they've engaged and how much they've really took time to consider their options. I don't know if anyone's done any extensive analysis on that, but my gut says that the people that we know about before they even apply are still with us 5 years later, and there's kind of a reason why that is, and a bit of a loyalty and bought into the company, so to speak. So interesting topic.
Well, it makes complete sense, and because it is also a two-way thing. It's not just which companies will give me a job, it's also which companies are going to be a good fit for me. And if you can start that recent company as similar values and ethics to myself, it's going to be a really good match. Then you're likely to be there longer than you will somewhere where you don't enjoy going to work, you don't enjoy the people you're with. You're not going to stick around at all.
No.
Moving on then, Dan. So you mentioned the virtual interview, the sort of recorded virtual interview. With the answering the questions then, is that a one take only option, or do candidates get a chance to re-record if it's not quite how they want it?
So there is a practice arena at the start of the digital interview, and in fact, if you go on our website, you get the link before you even apply to go and have a practice in using our technology, with our partner technology, so that you can see what it would be like So we do implement that a lot into sort of schools and on campus, so people can kind of get used to seeing themselves on the screen, or, you know, going through the technology and testing the audio and technology so that you can see what it would be like. So we do implement that a lot into sort of schools and on campus, so people can kind of get used to seeing themselves on the screen, or, you know, going through the technology and testing the audio and stuff like that. So that's kind of reassuring. When they go into the actual questions, there's a lot of explicit instructions about what they need to do and what they need to prepare, and then they will be given a time period to see and read the question or listen to the question, and then they will have another period of time to answer that question. So it's usually a 30-second read the question, and then a minute and a half to actually, or up to 3 minutes to actually answer the question, depending on what we're asking and what sort of length of answer we're suggesting we're hoping to see. Re-recording, etc., isn't an option based on the strengths methodology, really, because it's not about having a polished, rehearsed, regurgitated type answer, because you can't go into a meeting and expect to know exactly what the client's going to ask or say, and you need to be able to act credible and be a client advocate and know what you need to know. So if you can't answer questions on the spot about yourself, then how well do you even know yourself? Trying to second guess, predict, or go on wiki jobs until, you know, your eyes bleed to find out the inside scoop is going to be easy to spot and see, really, because you're trying to be something that isn't natural, and that isn't something, you're not going to have that prep when you go into a meeting or you're going to go into an assessment centre. You can't fake that on the day. So as I said at the outset of this topic, we're not looking for the polished actor and actress. It's not about a performance or some sort of polished TV presenter style, you know, delivery. It's more about.
So you mentioned there what you're looking for. What are some of the no-nos then, where, you know, the howlers that people have been making? What mistakes do people need to avoid to get past this stage?
I think one of the ones that I see quite often is that they've clearly not took time to read the instructions or advice and guidance, or watch the suggested video about the hints and tips, or, you know, they've just maybe a generation which is quite digital savvy, which is fair to say. Hopefully me and you are still in that category. But, you know, the majority of the graduates and apprentices are, you know, a largely younger audience, and have been, you know, grew up with an iPhone in their hands and things, Samsungs and other devices that are out there available. And maybe they just think it's so self-intuitive to just click through, skip, you know, agree, tick boxes, and I'm straight on front of the camera. And then it's like, oh God, you know, I tick boxes and I'm straight on front of the camera. And then it's like, oh God, you know, and they come away and they're probably thinking that wasn't great at all. And, you know, that does speak volumes itself, that, you know, again, going into the working world, you can't really expect to go into these meetings or going into these projects and going into things without being prepared, going into an exam or piece of coursework without knowing what the questions, you know, might be about, or what you wouldn't do it. So why would you do it with something like an interview or an assessment centre or even a digital interview? So, you know, it's that preparation piece there that you can tell that there's a difference between being nervous and being unprepared. And we can absolutely see the people who've not really, you know, and it does suggest to us that they're not really that bothered about it, when actually they might really be. It's just that they've fell short on that. So candidates can reapply if they are rejected at stages on working for us, but also their preferences, their role choices and their experiences might lead them down a different role, and maybe there's some different questions they might be asked the next time round. So that's one of the key frustrations from a recruit perspective, is clearly seeing the difference between nervous and difference between unprepared. I guess those that are unable to maybe expand in detail to back up their point, you know, if it's asking them about if they enjoy analysing data, you know, do you enjoy analysing data? It could be a real question. The answer technically could be yes, no, maybe, sort of, kind of, and then that's it. It's like, well, you know, why? Why don't you like it? Why do you like it? If you do like it, and you can explain why, what sort of evidence comes with that, and you start to then bring in things that are credible, and give evidence behind why you're interested in that, or why you're good at that, and why don't you like it, why do you like it. If you do like it, and you can explain why, what sort of evidence comes with that, and you start to then bring in things that are credible, and give evidence behind why you're interested in that, or why you're good at that, and why you like doing it.
Yeah.
But we won't say, tell me about the last time you analysed a piece of data, because the last time might not be the best one to give. And you can rehearse that answer and give, put all the bells and whistles on, and we might not be able to actually prove that was not the case. So these questions are positioned in a way which are more conversational, more dialogue, and more natural questions that should prompt people to talk more about things than maybe you might be kind of expecting. But that's a good thing. It's giving you more evidence to go on as a screener, as a recruiter.
As you said earlier, some of the competency and specifically the STAR methodology, which like the strengths-based questions, which you said are just a lot more natural than I will tell you about this group exercise where somebody didn't pull their weight and I took the lead and so yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, quality advice there around the virtual interviews. I love the distinction you draw between nervousness and being unprepared. It's a really good distinction. And listeners, check out the 96th episode of the Graduate Job podcast, which will be on virtual interviews. So it should be the one just before this one, where we're going to detail on how you can prepare for virtual interviews. So links in the show notes at graduatejobpodcast.com/Capgemini. And also, if you do want to practice recorded virtual interviews, then I can help you, and you can practice them live with a virtual recording, and then I'll be able to review it with you, and we can go through and just analyse your performance and how it looks. The assessment centre day, a day that does come with some trepidation for applicants. Firstly, what sort of timescale would we be looking at from getting your online application in to making it through to the assessment centre?
I got asked this question yesterday, actually, so this is quite a good one. The straight answer is that it depends. We work in the consulting sector, and therefore we're driven by client needs. If, in situations where the demand for a graduate and apprentice on certain projects is no longer needed, or it's been reduced or postponed, that could mean that when the assessment centre runs is slightly postponed by days, weeks, or potentially a month or so. That we don't have application window closing dates. We hire on a first come first served basis. We don't have pools and pools of candidates that are spilling over into sort of a holding pen. We don't have application window closing dates. We hire on a first come first served basis. We don't have pools and pools of candidates that are spilling over into sort of a holding pen. We don't have much sort of wastage and spillage on that front to keep the candidate experience quite positive. We do recruit year round. Some roles are open for longer than others. Some roles, like software developer, we might have 80 roles. We might only have 2 cybersecurity, but the number of people applying for cybersecurity in a week versus software developer might be 5-fold. So there's a sort of a predicted number of candidates that we think, based on the screening, based on pass rates, based on withdrawal rates, based on offer rates, to show which roles will require which number of applications at the start, in the front end of the funnel. So using that methodology, we can sort of predict how long we might be open for, which does in some ways encourage us to communicate when we'll close it, because you don't want candidates who complete all the stages and then not have an assessment centre to go to, because that's obviously feels like they've been cheated on, they've been wasted their time and things.
Yep.
So I know that other employers in the graduate apprentice space have a different way of working. They have a different maybe resourcing set up as well, where they have a real big surge maybe in Q4, and then they review all the applicants in Q1, then they run all their ACs in Q2, and they all start in Q3, and it runs in a very cyclical, repetitive way each year. But our industry is just too volatile for that to set out in that way, and we will recruit and go live and pull and push roles open and live as and when we kind of need them. And that kind of goes back to one of the points earlier, which is around the long-term engagement, the warm candidates, the people who are pre-engaged with the brand. They're more likely to then obviously hear about the roles as soon as the people who are pre-engaged with the brand. They're more likely to then obviously hear about the roles as soon as they go live because they're registered for interest, and then they're in pole position. Whereas yourself, I don't know, Joe Bloggs is on campus and clicks on a job board, and the role that was there yesterday is no longer there, but he didn't know or she didn't know that, and therefore he's missed the chance with Capgemini because he didn't engage directly with us before. And not every employer works like that as such, but we've actually reduced the number of applications this year than we had last year from 11,000 down towards 7,000. So we don't need those extra applications as such to fill the roles we have, but the volume of warm candidates versus cold candidates is obviously starting to go on the up. So we would encourage those listeners who are undergrads or postgrads, whatever, to stream of warm candidates versus cold candidates is obviously starting to go on the up. So we would encourage those listeners who are undergrads or postgrads, whatever, to make sure that when they are engaging with these brands and when they are, sacrificing or giving up data to register online, that they know what exactly they're getting from that. Is it updates, is it newsletters, is it first to hear about new roles? What's the ROI for you in the exchange for your information? There's no point giving that if you're not really going to act upon it when you know. So don't just register for everyone and everything. But back to your point that you mentioned there, James, around 5 or 6 people that you really wanted to work for. Why wouldn't you want to be first in the queue for when the shop's open, so to speak?
Yep.
So makes sense.
No, completely. And the secret, if there is one, is the sooner the better is the key for applications. Don't be leaving it till 2 weeks before. And if you were planning to leave it to the last minute, you're left high and dry and got to wait another year. But it's your own fault. Get it in at the beginning.
Absolutely. And the analogy that was used yesterday was around, going to the shop. And if you are going to go and do your weekly shop at 4:45 and the shop shuts at 5, you're going to find that some of the things you wanted to buy are not there.
Yeah,
they're out of stock. And a bit like the application window for the employers, you go with your shopping list of who you want to apply to, and 6 or 7 of the items of the 10 that you wanted to buy are closed. It's not always possible to go to the shop at 9 a.m, so to speak, for keeping with the analogy, but don't use the deadline as your incentive to apply. It's there. Sometimes companies do it if they're anticipating or expecting or are used to a surge or have a resource capability that's set up to deal with some sort of surge. We're more in clock, turn off and on sort of style, and work with our warm candidates a little bit more.
That makes sense. Okay, Dan. So breaking down then the assessment centre into its constituent pieces, the group exercise is often one that candidates worry about, maybe because it's something they've not really practiced before or had the experience of. Any words of wisdom for people who are going to be facing the group exercise?
I would say, as cliche as it sounds, make sure that you are yourself in that situation. I guess what we mean by that normally is that there's often a lot of things you read around people that assert some sort of position in the group. Are they the minute taker? Are they the person who's like the project manager? Are they the person who has the ideas? If you don't know what you're going to be presented with, it can be quite hard for you to play some sort of role like that. If there's an opportunity, it can be quite hard for you to play some sort of role like that. If there's an opportunity to do some of those things where there's a gap, where there's somebody not picking up some of those key things that employers might be expecting a group to do around time management and including other people in the group that are not coming to light with including them in the conversation if they're a bit quieter. Active listening for me is a key one, from an eye contact perspective, but also from a written note and referring back to data that people or quotes that people have used in their in the group exercise, so that you've actively shown that you've listened to what they've said. nodding and smiling, yes, gets you something somewhere, but doing that all the way through is not actually showing that you've made. Are you finishing their sentences? Are you giving them feedback? Are you sure that people are able to contribute? I know our model allows people to have to contribute in the exercise with their proposal, their solution, and where it goes after that is obviously a natural group dynamic. So a couple of other key things I'd mention is that if you're naturally someone that isn't quite as dynamic within a group setting, see if there's certain things that are naturally are more natural for you to be the Spock for, or natural for you to hone in on. So if you're quite into your data or your stats and stuff, maybe you're the person who can make sure that you're on hand to sort of hone in on those strengths. If you've got an affiliation with the actual topic outside of the day itself, I know some examples we had where people had been involved with charity work and it was linked to some CRNS activities, and they actually used some examples from outside of. If you've got an affiliation with the actual topic outside of the day itself, I know some examples we had where people had been involved with charity work and it was linked to some CRNS activities, and they actually used some examples from outside of the setting of the day to prove and add some credibility to their idea, and that landed really well. Again, putting yourself in a client situation, they're going to expect us as experts to actually be able to refer to other examples of work so that we can show that this has been done before, that they can trust us. Yeah. So yeah, there's lots of opportunities for students to earn points as you go through the exercise. Don't feel like you've got to sort of play a specific typecast role. And one final point would be, if you don't say or do anything, you have no real way of scoring at all. So you can't feel hard done by
assessing group exercises. And as you said about the roles, you can see everyone have been, they've been prepped beforehand. It's like, okay, right, the roles. So about 4 of the 6 people volunteered to be timekeeper. It's like, I'll be timekeeper. And the person who, volunteered first and got the timekeeper role, then just sort of didn't do anything with it the entire way through the assessment centre. They forgot that actually as timekeeper they were meant to keep time. So they volunteered for it, but then didn't do anything with it. And I liked your analogy of almost like the nodding dog from the Churchill TV adverts, where you're just sort of smiling and nodding. It's you need to say something and actually make some contributions. But I think another thing for me was the mentality shift when you get to the assessment centre stage, and it's the realization that you're no longer in competition with the people around the table with you. It's if you're all good, you'll all get the job. And if you can help them and bring out the best in them and their points, and if you can help them and bring out the best in them and their points, and do it in a collaborative way, because collaboration is a very important thing at Capgemini when I was there. And it's you can showcase those skills and just change that mindset when you go into the assessment centre, that you're there to help each other perform to your best.
Mm-hmm.
With the interview then at the assessment centre, any advice on this? Because would it be with one of the senior managers in the business?
The assessors are people from different grades actually within the business. There could be some people who are the graduate development leads for that area of the business, who are concerned with their development professionally and personally during their time on programs and in roles. There could be some who are former graduates who are now in roles of a certain level to be able to assess. And there's others who may be some senior specialists who programs and in roles. There could be some who are former graduates who are now in roles of a certain level to be able to assess. And there's others who may be some senior specialists who maybe they're line managers or project managers on the assignments in the future. So that's quite a good thing that there is a mix. There's always a graduate there who's from that area or in that role from years gone by, whether it's as an assessor or as a volunteer on a day, maybe they joined last year or 2 years ago, to get a good insight into what it's like as a graduate and maybe previously as a graduate. But there's no difference in what people are asking. It's all kept consistent and fair, and every assessor will get to see every candidate in a different environment. So there's a good holistic view of all the candidates and a good holistic view for the candidates of who they could be working with.
Mm-hmm.
The digital interview in a way. The strengths questions are there as well. There will be some motivation type questions also. And I think if they're talk about being confident, and some people are not naturally confident. Some people are really able to exude confidence externally, and inside are really shaking. So that's something to think about, how they come across perhaps. Again, there's a key difference between nervousness and being unprepared. There's certain things that people will have as development points that we know that we can shape or hone in on and make better. And nobody ever comes out of an interview with, full marks as such. So we're not looking to use the interview to trip people up. Strength is there to try and it will raise red flags if there's something that doesn't sort of marry up with what we're looking for. But it allows candidates an opportunity to perform in the best way they can, and I think, the interviews are the most highest scoring area of the day in terms of how many points you can, attain during that exercise. And probably, it's maybe just over half the marks on the day. So it is an important part of the day in terms of how you perform overall. But, when you look at 75+% of our candidates actually pass our assessment centres, a lot of the work to find the right people has been done further up the chain from an attraction and assessment selection stage. So we don't really think that there's many candidates, if any, that are not in contention for an offer as they walk in that door or sign on that link virtually as it is. We hope and we can potentially offer all those people that come to the AC. And again, that's a bit of a myth with some employers that maybe hire the best person on the day or the top two, and there's maybe 20 people there. With ours, we have the best intentions that we'll offer everyone on that day. So you're not competing with others.
Yeah, that's a really good stat to keep in mind. Just to talk about confidence and being confident, and you make a great point. Why would you invite anyone to the assessment centre if you didn't think they could do the job? Just be a complete waste of everybody's time. Be confident that you've done well to get there. You've impressed to get there. So this is a chance for you to shine and show Dan and the team what you can do. One maybe final question then, Dan, before we move to the weekly staple questions. Where do people really let themselves down then? Well, what are some of the things that you see at the assessment centre stage where they're shaking your head thinking, oh dear, why did they do that?
So if I do it by exercise, I think there's a couple of things which some students, some applicants might not realise they're doing is they are looking almost for approval from the observants or from the assessors during the exercise, that when they're speaking, to almost work out either who's assessing me or have what I said created somebody to write something. It's almost like reaffirmation process that they want, that what they've said or what they've done or what they've challenged on has landed, and it's like they want that constant reapproval during the exercise, and that can be potentially off-putting for everyone, really, the assessor included, because they don't know who's assessing who, and they need to keep the eye contact with the candidate that they're looking at. And if they've kind of sussed that out, and I just don't see why candidates have got that in their head to be very maybe anxious or cautious over who's looking at them. That means that they are comfortable and that they're just there in the most natural way. Are we going to be doing a group exercise at work every day? Of course we're not. But if you go into a meeting or a call or a workshop, you're not going to be constantly thinking about what the reaction is to what you're going to say. It's just going to become hopefully quite natural. So that's quite a difficult one, for us to kind of get our heads around. But we can obviously share feedback on that, and we do that after the assessment centres the next day and the next week. Some of the things that they've done, those that really just didn't give us enough in their motivational answers in the interview to help differentiate and personalise themselves against others, that is, you're the only person that can actually do that. As easy as that sounds, if you really can't articulate exactly why and why exactly you, then you probably let yourself. You probably let yourself down, and there's already been a written version of that, a digital version of that, and that was your chance to really kind of tie it all together and form a bit of rapport with the assessor and really show that you could see yourself working with them. And I think the other thing would be also in the interview is they're fully aware that this is a strengths-based process, but they still are adhering to what they see and read online and, what people have told them, and have almost carbon copied and maybe fictitiously made up some examples to glorify their example, which when you're found out and you're being asked for more detail, we're not doing that to trip you up, but you may trip yourself up by doing that. And I've seen one or two examples of that firsthand interviewing years ago where there was somebody, whilst there wasn't a Capgemini situation happened, and I didn't know, but a colleague of ours actually used to work for that large global firm, and that is never ever even legally allowed to happen. So by making up and glorifying that example, that person's credibility just immediately went. He didn't need to be a superhero in that situation. Yeah. It was already quite a good example. It just didn't need the bells and whistles that he thought he needed. So keeping to your script what actually happened, because again, you can't be making things up with our clients and then not be backing it up with the solutions. You can't overpromise and deliver, and you know that yourself. So don't be doing it when you're at interview, because if you're hired and we've hired what is effectively the wrong person, not the person that we thought we hired, then that's a bad recruitment decision, and it can influence obviously and affect attrition rates and things. So just don't blow the trumpet too much. Just make sure that you're telling the truth, I think.
Honesty is definitely the best policy. So yeah, that's a good point for us to finish the main part of the interview on. So just conscious of your time, Dan. So let's quickly move on to the quickfire weekly staple questions. So what one book would you recommend to listeners? What's going to impress them as if they've named up this book during the recruitment process?
I'm probably going to be biased here, and I'll go for a book that I think can be applied very widely, but allows people to individualise their interpretation of the book. And it's Simon Sinek's Start With Why. I think the question why and the curiosity that mindset of the mindset of having a curious mind is great from an innovation and from a consultancy perspective. So if they can and looking to solve problems in a new way, and that's exactly what we do as a business, and why we have clients, because they don't have the solutions in house.
Excellent. It's a quality book, and it will be linked to in the show notes over at graduatejobpodcast.com/Capgemini. And next question, Dan, what one website or internet resource would you point listeners towards?
I'm going to say a generic one here, because it's generic, but it can be tailored, and the key is that latter bit that I mentioned. So for me, in terms of career-related content, LinkedIn, there is zero competitor to that for me, and it works supremely well for me personally, and as a former student, a graduate, job seeker, etc., purely because of how well you can help influence the algorithm, bring the news and bring the relevant content and influences to your feed and to your groups and to your network. You can get such rich content from there daily. You can dip in and out and get such a zero procrastination on that platform. You're not there to waste time on it. You're there to get some real value. So absolutely encourage it. Don't worry about trying to get yourself to be some sort of blue tick or send the internet crazy with something viral. It's not about that on LinkedIn. You're going to get some supreme connections, networks, and value from just observing and watching what's going on. And if you do that in your first year at uni, by the time you're in third or fourth year, you'll absolutely know who you want to work for and why.
Definitely. And also it's unlike some parts of the internet, it's a very positive place. It's not full of negativity and hate. It's lots of positive content that can help you. So really good advice there.
Very good point. Often overlooked that.
Yeah, compared to say Twitter, which can be so much negativity. Of positive content that can help you. So really good advice there.
Very good point. Often overlooked that.
Yeah, compared to say Twitter, which can be so much negativity on there.
Yeah.
And final question then today, Dan. What one tip can listeners implement today to help them on their job search?
My tip would be once you've worked out by looking at content and looking at different companies, ones you've met, haven't met, wanted to work for, maybe were curious about, if you're going to go and register for things and in exchange for your data, do make sure that you do that, and then you can be in a better position further down the line to either have exclusivity, first refusal on application to roles. You'll be invited to, more exclusive events, webinars, face-to-face sessions, and you might find that there are some reasons why you don't want to work for that. So, yeah, it's linked to the career searching piece, but you can individualise by signing up for Google Alerts or signing up for alerts from employers.
Brilliant advice and a lovely place for us to finish the interview. Dan, so thank you so much for your time today. What's the best way that people can get in touch with Capgemini and the work that you do?
So Capgemini, from Google Capgemini careers pages or the graduate pages, there's direct connections to me on LinkedIn if people want to do that, /Dan Doherty, Twitter and Instagram as well. We've got content that goes out from our corporate platforms, from the Capgemini UK accounts that will feature and showcase some of our graduate opportunities and life as a graduate at Capgemini.
Excellent. Dan, thank you so much for appearing on the Graduate Job Podcast.
Thanks very much. Thanks all.
There you go. Many thanks to Dan for such a great interview. So much value there to take with you. It was slightly longer than normal, but I just didn't want to cut out anything as it was all so good. As I said, I started my career at Capgemini, so I'm slightly biased, but it is a really great place to work, and particularly the Accelerate Invent program is a fantastic scheme to start your career with. You will get breadth of experience that it's difficult to get anywhere else, and it will set you up for whatever else you want to do in your career, whether it's stay in consulting or even if you want to move into other fields. So make sure you do check them out. As Dan touched upon throughout the interview, getting into Capgemini will be competitive, so you will need to be your best through every single stage. So don't underestimate this difficulty, as you don't want to be one of the 65% of people who fail to even make it past the very first stage. Now, if you are serious about a career in consulting, then make sure you check out my course, How to Get a Graduate Job, which goes live on the 27th of August, as I take you step by step through every stage of the recruitment process that you'll go through when applying. Make sure you check out my course, How to Get a Graduate Job, which goes live on the 27th of August, as I take you step by step through every stage of the recruitment process that you'll go through when applying to companies like Capgemini. I will teach you across 8 different video modules, everything you need to know and everything you need to do to make sure you make the grade and impress. As a first step, get yourself across to howtogetagraduatejob.com and get my free guide, the 5 steps you must take before you start applying for graduate jobs. It will revolutionise how you get ready to start applying for graduate schemes. Right, let's leave it there today. Thanks again to Dan Doherty, and do drop me a line over at hello@graduatejobpodcast.com and let me know what you thought of that.